Show and Tell is a section we publish every Monday, and it's just little brief items about schools, and sometimes they're either students or teachers winning awards, things like that. And this was just a follow-up, actually, to a couple of larger stories I wrote about, they call it the After School Satan Club. And there is a national group, I believe, called the Satanic Temple. And they have a lot of qualifications. They say they don't really worship Satan, but they worship reason and science and rationality and things like that. But they have this program called an After-School Satan Club that is actually in a few schools across the country, and they're trying to get it into more schools. And one of the schools, there's a chapter in Seattle, which is about 30, 40 miles north of us. So the Seattle chapter of the Satanic Temple announced that they wanted to come to Tacoma in one of our schools and form an after-school Satan club. There was some reaction in the community, although surprisingly not as much as you'd think. And this particular article that you're looking at, one of the local churches decided to host a meeting to discuss the situation. Nothing's really happened yet. I believe that the people who want to start this have gotten their forms to apply to run an after-school program, but the program is not up and running yet. It's a choice after-school program, and I suppose if nobody signs their kids up, then the program would fold. The interesting aspect of the story to me was, A, it was coming to our town, and B, I called the Satanic Temple, and I said, why do you want to come to Tacoma? You know, you guys are in Seattle, the big city. Why don't you, mind your own business up there? And they said they were targeting schools in particular that have something called a Good News Club. And the Good News Club is, again, a national program started by a Christian organization. I can't remember what state they're based in, but I called them also and said, do you know about this? And in fact, they did. This is going on all over the country. So the Satanic Temple folks are looking at schools where the Good News Clubs exist, and there is one at this particular Tacoma school. And it's a Christian sort of Bible-based kind of program. Again, it's something that parents can opt into. And lots of school districts do this, particularly larger districts. They have, the YMCA runs an after-school program, apparently this Christian group, there's, art programs and dance and all kinds of different nonprofit type groups in the schools doing these kind of activities. So the After School Satan Club just wants to be another one.
Well, I think the point they were making is that that school did have a religious aspect in that they had a good news club for Christians. So, on a completely logical basis, why shouldn't they have one as well? Personally, I don't think any religion has a place in school. Doesn't matter what it is. Christian, Hindu, Muslim, Satanist, doesn't matter. It should be kept out of school, and school should be secular and completely non-denominational. And then if you want to pursue your religion, you should do that outside of school. But, if you really want to feel the country you say that you are, that exercises religious freedom and tolerance, then, provided they're not sacrificing goats on the altar, and it doesn't sound like they are, then why not?
Well, I'll say this, and it's not just because I'm a Christian. I'll say this because it's, quite frankly, fact. Anything that has the name Satan attached to it cannot be good, is not good, should not be good. Now, I'm not saying that, people have, the free will to do with what they do. That's why we're here. But as for me personally, I wouldn't choose to participate in anything that had the devil's name in it. But it's kind of funny how the name Jesus isn't allowed, but Satan is. I find that to be kind of strange. They say they don't worship Satan, yet they use his name. Okay, well, I don't know about that, but I'll stick to what I said. Anything that has the devil's name in it can't be good, regardless of whether you believe that or not. It's not good. So no, my answer to that question is no. But I'm not in charge. But I would say, from a cautionary standpoint, I don't know if I'd play around with the devil. Just saying.
Absolutely not. And like Casey said, it's not okay to have Jesus in school with children, but it's okay to have Satan there. I think for them specifically going around and trying to target schools with the Good News Club in it is just taunting Christians. And I think they think that Christians, it's okay to do that. It might be okay today in the world, but at the end, during and right after the tribulation, they'll see that it's not.
Start and stop.
My understanding is that in America there is freedom of religion. And so, although the popular vote may be to deny this club's existence, legally they have every right to form their own club and to have that at schools. Whether I would go or I would send my kids to that club, that's a whole other discussion. But legally, they would have a right to form that club just as any other religious organization would.
Bag lady here. Casey, you made a very good point. In the 80s, they took the whole concept of prayer out of schools. And for this satanic organization to want to target schools that are affiliated with the Good News organization is just a pure sign that we are living in the last days. And, everybody needs to get on one accord with the Lord and just prepare for the tribulation and, everything that we're about to endure, everything that is going on right now in society, on the news, all of that was foretold in the Bible, in the book of Revelation. All of it is prophetic and it is coming to fruition. And, these satanic worshipers, or Luciferians as some of them like to be called, they're such a big part of society right now. You even have some famous people, actors, musicians, politicians, etc., who are stone cold Luciferians, and they owe their success and their power and their wealth to Satan. And this is just a prime example with the satanic organization trying to get into the schools to influence the next generation of children that are coming. It's just a sign of the times. And people, we need to really start praying for one another. We need to really strengthen our relationships with God, and we need to start even praying when we're in certain environments that we know are chaotic, We have to plant the seeds in our own children and in our friends and in our family members. And we have to let them know about the goodness of the Lord. It is important. We all could be taken off of this earth tomorrow, So I wish everyone a good evening. And do know I would never let a satanic organization invade my child's school.
Thank you, Debbie, for sharing this story and the talk that it has raised in the community. It brings up a few very interesting points. First of which is what happens to all the innocent people who happen to take over renting a home or apartment that was previously occupied by a sex offender who did not update law enforcement as to their change of address. I know a lady who married a gentleman only to be told by her neighbor that he was a child molester, at which point she went looking through his papers and personal effects in the basement, and apparently he liked to keep court documentation of his bad judgments and the consequences. And so she left him. And I know I attended a school for the blind and low vision in the state of Illinois. And what would happen sometimes is individuals who they could not find good placement for maybe would be shipped there because there was no other facility for them. So I saw things like this happen and kept under wraps. So there has to be some accountability. That's fine if the school needs to provide him an education, but that certainly has to be balanced with a right to know so that females do not put themselves in a situation where they are alone with this male. Likewise, whether he has his own seat on the bus, because things can happen on a bus. So, just a few thoughts, but I appreciate you sharing those insights because it is something important to talk about how you balance the rights of one to get their education and the rights of those around to protect themselves and not put themselves in a situation. That was a new substitute driver, but had the other students known, they could have corrected that situation and said, look, this gentleman's supposed to be chaperoned. So just a few thoughts.
Amongst first graders and stuff, that's still the age. I mean, if they're acting out sexually, something is going on at home. But two, I've noticed that some of these places are getting so wrapped up in that they're trying to make a big deal out of a child's curiosity. I remember growing up, if you show me yours, I'll show you mine. Curiosity, and yes, an adult needs to step in and say, okay, that's not appropriate, but and handle it in a positive way. That's not for you to do right now. When you get married, that's different, or however the adult wants to handle it in a proper manner. But if a child is acting out sexually, I'm going to go looking at the parents or whoever in their family or their friends or the friends that their parents are hanging out with. Something is going wrong somewhere, and that does need to be investigated. But the child doesn't need to be beat up over it because that may be all they know. That's where you've got to look into the child as well. But be careful how you do that, because if you start accusing them, then they just might do more than what they did.